What is up? I'm back. It's me, Mr. Carter. Hope you're having a good day. This will be the last video before I'm back, so if you've been enjoying the videos, I'm glad to hear that. I've actually kind of enjoyed making them, so I don't know. Maybe I really will be a YouTuber. I don't know. All right, guys. So today we are going to finish talking about. Well, not finish. We're going to keep talking about it in the future, but we're going to continue talking about the civil rights movement. But we're going to kind of link it in with a larger conversation of decolonization. Okay. Remember, at the beginning of the year, we talked a lot about colonization. Okay, so the idea of these nations that are powerful going out, right, and taking other places, claiming them for their own, and then, teaching the people their language and doing all this stuff. That's why, so many countries in the world speak languages that are not native to them. Think about Mexico. They speak Spanish. It's because they were colonized by the Spanish. There's lots of other examples. Think about South Africa. There are so many English speakers in South Africa, and there are white South Africans. It's all from colonization. So after World War II, we have something called decolonization. So you might be like, well, yesterday we were talking about Martin Luther King. Why are we talking about decolonization? Well, because today we're going to look at Malcolm X, but we're going to look at him kind of in the context of this decolonization event. What was going on with so many, frankly, non-white countries at the time? Why was he so appealing? And he wasn't really, he wasn't saying things that were original ideas. And a lot of people found him very intimidating and very scary. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so in your notes, you should just continue on from yesterday when we were talking about Martin Luther King Jr. So I want you to make a new note, and I want you to write down Malcolm X, Malcolm, Malcolm, and then literally the X, okay? So you may know some things about him. There's a lot of misinformation about him. A lot of people have said that he's like a violent individual. I'm going to be frank with you. A lot of the information that was out there and still is about Malcolm X is misinformation because people were terrified of him and they were trying to slander him. That's really what it is. I don't agree, obviously, with everything that he said because he comes at the civil rights movement from a totally different stance than Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is a Christian, so everything is rooted in biblical ideology, this idea of servanthood, and sacrificial service. Malcolm X is a Muslim, and so he's going to come at it from a totally different angle. His philosophy is much more aggressive. It just is, which is what makes him appealing to a different audience. You got to think about this, okay? Today, there are race issues in our country, as with any country, okay? There are going to be people who feel prejudiced against, right? And they're going to respond with, sometimes they're going to respond with charity and peace and love, okay? And sometimes they're not. And sometimes there is a place for people to, in the eyes of society, there is a place for people to rise up and, throw off an oppressor. Malcolm X kind of takes the stance that, white people in the 1960s are not going to listen to Martin Luther King because they see him as weak. That was his stance. He never directly encouraged violence. And he was very careful to not do that. So it's not like he's going out and blowing stuff up and killing people. There are people that kill people in his name. He himself never encouraged it, but he walks this fine line where he's like, I'm not going to say that it's good, but I'm also not going to say that it's bad. In a lot of his speeches, he uses language that's a lot more inflammatory and aggressive than Martin Luther King. So I'm going to send a video once again to Miss Rodriguez, or if there's an easier way, maybe I can post it on the LMS or something, but sometimes that doesn't work. But you'll see in this speech, he speaks in a totally different way. He's reaching a totally different crowd. Because he's Muslim, he kind of issues in this new wave of American Islam. It is very popular with black communities. I think part of the reason why it's popular is that in the South specifically, Christianity had become so, unfortunately, it had just become so tainted by a lot of people's racial ideas. They were justifying, white supremacy with things in the Bible, which of course, that's ridiculous. There's nothing like that in the Bible, but it was happening. Islam offers an alternative. It doesn't say, it really isn't a philosophy that preaches servitude. Does that make sense? To your neighbor. You really don't owe anyone anything. So it is more aggressive. That's just the truth. So the people who listen to Malcolm X are the people who are probably more angry. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that Martin Luther King wasn't angry. He was, but it's a different type of approach. King is more palatable to white people. Okay? Because of that, he is much more popular, and he's much more, he's allowed to exist in white spaces. For example, John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, meets Martin Luther King. Malcolm X, it's not the same, okay, because he's dangerous. He's part of this religion that they don't really understand. He uses this language that kind of is like, is he telling people to commit violence? Is he not? He's also, he's a cold kind of figure, all right? Like, very cold. He's brilliant. When you listen to him, you're like, wow, that was really amazingly said. And what's interesting is, like, obviously I'm not black, I'm a white man, but even when I listen to him, I'm like, I can find myself understanding what he's saying and in some way relating to it. I can get why people would listen to him. He's saying what a lot of people were thinking. He's just saying it in a different way than King was. So I want you to write down. He was a Muslim civil rights leader. It's important to know that he was Muslim. And I think at the core of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's personalities are these religious differences. They see the world in a totally different way because of their religion. Okay? So, Muslim civil rights leader. I would also say feared by white American society, which is true. He was feared. He made people very uncomfortable. He made white people very uncomfortable. By the way, both Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X are assassinated. It's no coincidence. These are two men who are standing up and saying things that were incredibly unpopular, but true. And so, you die for that. And that's just sad. But that's always been the way that it is in our world. The people who stand up and say things that no one else is brave enough to say, they die. So, I want you to also write down, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X want the same thing, but they go about it in two different ways. And you can rephrase that however you want, but I just want you to know that they're after the same thing. They want the same goal. They want equal rights. They want to end segregation, but they want it in two totally different ways. Best way to think about it is like, Martin Luther King is like, the only way to get people to listen is to make them feel sorry for you. And Malcolm X is like, the only way to get people to listen is to force them to listen. Sometimes that means literally holding them down and saying, you're going to listen to what I have to say. He doesn't discourage the use of physical force. Okay, so it's a really big distinction between the two men. All right, the Malcolm X approach of civil rights, this idea of like, well, the white man is never going to listen. You have to force him to hear you. That is the most popular idea in this decolonization era. So I want you to make a new section in your notebook. okay? Or just make a new little title, okay? Just call it decolonization. I promise this is all going to make sense. They're very connected, okay? Decolonization. All right. I want you to write down, after World War II, former colonized nations become free. So think about this. If England owned all of these colonies and then they get utterly blown up in World War II, they're now unable to really control those colonies, and so they become free. They have no choice but to let them go. Even their most prized possession, like India, becomes independent. So you now have all of these places that are being decolonized, and of course these are the countries that are, that America's like, you want to be capitalists? You want to join us? And of course the Soviets are like, hey, you should join us. Those are the countries that are being targeted. But at the center of a lot of their problems is this idea that, like, because they had been colonized by people who are white for, sometimes 200, 300 years, they don't trust the United States or the Soviet Union. Namely, I'm thinking of countries like Vietnam, okay, or Korea, North Korea, although they do trust the Soviet Union, I guess. But these nations that are like, you're never going to listen to me. I can't get involved with you, especially the Middle East. A lot of countries in the Middle East are like, I don't want you. I don't want you in my area. I don't care about this. It's the Malcolm X approach. They may not have even known who Malcolm X is. Okay, he was really mainly an American figure. But his idea, like this concept of like, well, you can try to be peaceful, but they're just not going to hear you. A lot of nations would agree with that because, of course, they had 200, 300 years of experience of the colonizers not listening to them. So we can't really blame them. Okay, so I want you to write down underneath that last note. Many former colonies do not trust Western nations. Many former colonies do not trust Western nations. Okay, and so of course they're going to try to find their own identity. Sometimes the people that they elect are going to align with the United States, and we're going to be okay with it. We're going to be cool with it. And sometimes they're going to elect someone that's cool with the Soviets, and we're not going to be cool with that. And then sometimes they're going to elect someone who's not cool with anybody. All right, so for example, they don't elect this man. He takes power, but think about like Saddam Hussein. You ever heard of Saddam? Soviets didn't like Saddam. Okay, Americans don't like Saddam. But he was a natural product of decolonization. All of the problems that come about in our world today, like when you think about like the Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, even the Russia-Ukraine war, all of these things, and you're like, well, where did these come from? The Iranian conflict, the stuff with Israel, where did all this come from? I hope you're seeing this. Everyone, they're direct products of the Cold War. It's all from World War II, decolonization, the Cold War. There's a reason why these countries don't trust us. It's because of this time period. It's because all the stuff that happened during this time period. So I'm hoping that you're starting to see, when we're talking about civil rights, yes, we're talking about American civil rights, but it's bigger than that. Because America has to solve the civil rights problem because it's making us look bad on the world stage. Okay? And a lot of countries are seeing our problem and they're going to go, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to join these people. I don't trust them, right? Because my 300 years of experience has taught me, don't trust a white man. And America is going to take a very controversial approach to this. And instead of going, okay, well, you can do your own thing, we're basically going to be like, hey, you're going to take this freedom, whether you want to or not. And we're going to roll in with helicopters and machine guns, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. All right, so pretty soon we're going to start talking about Vietnam, which is the war that I find the most interesting. I'm not going to say I like it. I don't like any war. But I enjoy learning about the Vietnam War because it's remembered in such a strange way in contrast to World War I and World War II, even Korea. Korea is the forgotten war. But Vietnam is just like, you think about a Vietnam vet, they're treated differently than a World War II vet. World War II vets are now really dead and gone. But when I was growing up, I had seen World War II vets. And there is a kind of heroic, air about them. Even though, look, there's some horrible things that happened in World War II. But Vietnam doesn't have that. It doesn't have that kind of heroic vibe to it. It's sad and confusing. Most people don't even know why we were there. And by the way, it was our longest war. 15 years we were in Vietnam. So we'll start talking about that pretty soon. This is all connected. As long as you can keep in your brain, all of these things are connected. Don't start thinking of them as like separate things in different boxes. No. It's all connected. It's all part of a big web. That's what makes history so cool. That's why I love teaching modern history. And I'm looking forward to being back with you guys. I miss the engagement of the classroom. And if you're like, man, I really don't understand what's been going on in history, don't worry. I am going to come back and we're going to fix it all up and we're going to get good. All right. I'm going to stop yapping. I hope you have a great day. I will see you Monday. Okay? See you soon. Bye-bye.